Penguin Random House Audio presents Priest of Lies by Peter Mclean. Read for you by John Lee. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Part 1. Chapter 1. 500 corpses. That had been my wedding gift from Ailsa and the Queen's men. From this woman I called my wife. 500 or more burned and blackened corpses had been pulled out of the smoking rubble of the wheels after we bombed it into hell that God's Day afternoon. I still hadn't forgiven her for that. I hadn't forgiven myself. That was 6 months past now, and Ellenberg was in the grip of a summer heat. The river stank even worse than usual, but still the people of Dock Road came out to watch us pass. We were on horseback, Jochen and Bloody Ann and Fat Luca and me, and everyone had come out onto the streets to see us. We were the Pious Men, and in Ellenberg we were received like princes. 6 months ago the Wheels had been a wasteland of devastation. On my wedding day, Ailsa's company of army sappers had all but destroyed the district, with enough blasting powder to start a war, or, perhaps, as I hoped, to prevent one. The butcher's bill had been horrific, and to my mind that bill was laid squarely at Ailsa's door. If we cannot stop this infiltration, there will be another war, and we will lose. There will be another Avignon, right here in our own country. Ailsa had told me that, and she had swayed me to her cause and to the service of the Queen's men with those words. With those words and with threats. It was that or hang, I knew that. But when I thought of how the streets had looked the day after our wedding, I couldn't help but feel that Ailsa had brought Avignon to the wheels herself, in the service of the crown. My wife had done that, this murderous stranger I was forced to share a house with, to share a life with, whether I liked it or not. It was that or hang, and that was no choice at all. That was what the Queen's men could do. I had vowed then to rebuild, and I had done that. Dock Road ran through the heart of the Wheels, and a year ago it would have been unthinkable for me to be there. The Wheels belonged to the gut cutters. Everyone knew that. But on my wedding day all that had changed. The Wheels was mine now, and the docks too. All of Eastern Ellenberg belonged to the Pious Men, and that was good. It was good, and business had never been better, but it was still a long way from being safe. "I can see two faces that shouldn't be here," Bloody Ann said quietly, her voice raspy from years of shouting orders and the smoke of blasting powder. "The top of Fellmonger's Alley. You see them?" I glanced casually that way as I waved to a shopkeeper I recognized. He was behind on his payments, that one, and from the look on his face I could see that he knew it. No one fell behind with their payments on my streets, not if they knew what was good for them. I was the new boss of the Wheels, and I needed everybody there to understand that. "Aye," I said. "I see them, Bloody Ann." One of them was a resin smoker and petty thief who I had kicked out of the stink a year ago. The other I knew worked for Bloodhands. I had to force myself not to shudder when I thought of that name. He called himself Klaus Wendt in public these days, but he was Bloodhands, and he was a nasty piece of work and no mistake. He had been Ma Aditi's second in the gut cutters, but I knew he was more than that. Much more. The gut cutters had been wiped out on my wedding day, but the Scanions very much hadn't, and more to the point, neither had Bloodhands. The man who had called himself Ma Aditi's second in the gut cutters was the Scanions' head man in Ellenberg. He was something like a Queen's man himself back in Scania, far across the sea to the north, or at least he was working directly for someone who was. Worse than that, I knew he had the ear of the governor. He was a man who ruled his gang through simple fear, a man who commanded the loyalty of his men by holding a knife to the throats of their hostage children. We might be done fighting, but that didn't mean we could afford to grow complacent. I let my hands fall to the hilts of the weeping women as they hung heavy at my belt. They were a pair of beautifully crafted short swords that I had looted from a dead colonel after the last battle of Avignon. I had named them Remorse and Mercy, and thinking about bloodhounds had made me very much want to stab someone with them. I couldn't do that, though, not here. Not in front of people. Not any more, I couldn't. I was a prince in Ellenberg, and princes have men who do that sort of thing for them. I shot Fat Luca a look. He nodded and let his horse slow until he was riding behind the rest of us. He was still no horseman, but he was getting better at it. More to the point, he knew where Cato was in the crowd, which was more than I did. The man could be virtually invisible, when he wanted to be, but I knew Cato was following us on foot. He was an unremarkable-looking fellow with a little less than 40 years to him, lean and wiry and bearded like so many working men in the wheels and the stink. He was just another face in the crowd in his nondescript labourer's clothes. Cato was my brother Jochen's man, not mine. I still had no idea where Cato had come from, or what levers moved him. He had certain skills, though, skills I knew he hadn't learned in the army. Luca rode up beside me again, and I looked at him, and he gave me a short nod. That was done then, and there was no need to spare it another thought. Those two faces wouldn't be seen in the wheels again, or anywhere else, for that matter. That would make bloodhounds think twice about trying to spy on me in my own streets. The spies aside, our ride out went well enough. The Wheels was mostly on its way to being rebuilt by then, and many of the factories were back in operation. Those factories paid their taxes to me now, not to the gut-cutters, as did every business on Dock Road. That was good. I had never thought to see the day when the Pious Men controlled so much territory. I was rich, richer than I'd ever been, and one of the most powerful men in Ellenberg. Those things pleased me a great deal. Every business in the Wheels had paid their protection money to Ma Aditi for years. Of course they had. But come my wedding day, she hadn't been able to protect them at all. She had been too busy having her head cut off. That had been Cutter's work, too. Afterward, when the Pious Men came calling, with coin to rebuild and promises of a better future, those businesses had fallen into my lap like so much ripe fruit. Oh, how Governor Hauer hated that. "Good turnout," Bloody Ann observed. "Aye," I said, and I was unable to stop a smile of satisfaction from crossing my face. "It is." "Everyone loves you, Thomas," my brother Jochen said, but there was something in his tone that made me give him a look. He resented me, I knew that well enough, and more than that, he resented Ann's place at my right hand. He still thought he should have been my second, for all that he was fundamentally unsuitable for the role. "That they do," I said softly. "That they do." I hadn't wanted to return home afterward, but then I usually didn't. Ailsa would be at home after all, and I was in too good a mood to want to spoil it by seeing her. I went back to the Tanner's Arms with Anne and Luca instead. I would take the company of people I knew I could trust over that of a Queen's man any day of the week. I didn't know where Jochen went. He just said he had something to do, and he gave his horse to Luca and headed off on his own. He should have had a bodyguard with him, of course, but Jochen hated that. I suspected that the thing he had to do was get blind drunk and start a fight. It usually was. Still, we were back in the heart of the stink by then, the original Pious Men streets, and I knew he wouldn't come to any harm. Someone else probably would before the night was out, and tomorrow it would cost me silver to make it right with them. That happened too often these days, but Jochen was Jochen. Cookpot met us in the stable yard and took the horses, a smile lighting up his round, sweaty face as he stroked my black mare's nose. Cookpot had been a soldier once, and a pious man for a little while, but life as a groom suited him better. He was hurt in the mind, where it doesn't show, hurt by the things he had seen and done, but the horses brought him some peace. I felt like I had owed him that much at least after what I had put him through. The three of us went into the Tanner's through the back. Harry was behind the bar, still leaning on his stick, but a lot stronger than he had been 6 months ago, after he had taken the terrible wound that had nearly killed him. Black Billy was on the door, his heavy club hanging from his belt, and his shirt sleeves rolled up to display dark.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?